The summer of 1882 would forever be remembered in Millbrook Falls as the season when death rode the rails and love conquered fear. In those desperate weeks when the cholera swept through the Colorado Territory like wildfire through dry timber, one woman would prove that sometimes salvation arrives in the most unexpected forms. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Her name was Catherine Walsh, though everyone would come to know her simply as Kate, and her story begins not with romance or hope, but with a lie that would save more lives than any medicine could. They say that in times of great crisis, ordinary people discover extraordinary courage within themselves. But what happens when someone already carrying secrets arrives just as the world begins to crumble? Kate Walsh stepped off the Denver and Rio Grande railroad car into the mountain air of Millbrook Falls on a sweltering July morning, her worn leather traveling bag clutched tightly in her gloved hands. She had traveled nearly 2,000 miles to marry a man she had never met, carrying with her nothing more than a carefully crafted letter of introduction and skills that no proper lady of 1882 was supposed to possess. The town that greeted her was picture-perfect in its frontier charm, nestled between rolling pine-covered hills and the crystal-clear waters of the Clearwater River. Wooden sidewalks lined the main street where painted signs announced the presence of Stone's General Store, the Riverside Inn, and Dr. Thomas Bennett's medical practice. Children played in the dusty road while their mothers hung laundry on lines that stretched between modest frame houses. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where a stranger's arrival was noticed before their feet touched the platform, and where secrets were nearly impossible to keep. Dr. Thomas Bennett had been expecting this moment for 3 months, ever since he had placed his advertisement in the Denver Post, seeking a wife who could appreciate the quiet life of a country physician. At 34, he had dedicated his life to serving the people of Millbrook Falls, treating everything from mining accidents to childhood fevers with a gentle competence that had earned him the respect of every family in town. Yet loneliness had become his constant companion, and the prospect of sharing his life with someone who understood the demands of his calling had driven him to seek companionship through correspondence. Standing on the platform in his best Sunday coat, despite the heat, Dr. Bennett watched as passengers disembarked from the afternoon train. He recognized the traveling salesman, the miners returning from Denver, and the occasional visitor passing through to larger towns beyond the mountains. But when Catherine Walsh stepped down from the passenger car, something in his carefully ordered world shifted. She moved with a purposeful grace that spoke of inner strength, her dark blue traveling dress practical rather than fashionable, her auburn hair pinned back in a style that suggested efficiency over vanity. Their eyes met across the platform, and Dr. Bennett felt an unexpected flutter of nervousness. Her letters had been thoughtful and articulate, revealing a sharp intelligence and a genuine interest in the medical profession that had impressed him. But seeing her in person, he was struck by something he had not anticipated from their correspondence. There was a wariness in her green eyes, a careful way she held herself that suggested someone accustomed to being ready for trouble. "Miss Walsh, I presume," he said, approaching with his hat in his hands. She turned toward him with a smile that seemed both genuine and guarded, her voice carrying a slight accent that he could not quite place when she responded, "Dr. Bennett, thank you for meeting me." The train journey was quite eventful. As they walked toward his buggy, Dr. Bennett found himself studying his intended bride with the same attention he gave to diagnosing a patient. She answered his polite questions about her journey with pleasant conversation, but he noticed how her eyes constantly swept their surroundings, cataloging details with an intensity that seemed unusual for someone simply taking in a new town. When they passed his medical office, she paused almost imperceptibly, her gaze lingering on the building with what he could only describe as professional interest. The Riverside Inn, where Kate would stay until their wedding could be arranged, was a modest establishment run by Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, a kindly widow who had taken it upon herself to welcome every newcomer to Millbrook Falls. Mrs. Hayes bustled about Kate's room, ensuring that everything was comfortable while peppering her with gentle questions about her background and expectations. Kate answered with practiced ease, describing her life in Pennsylvania, her work as a seamstress, and her desire for a quieter life in the mountains. But Mrs. Hayes, like many women who had raised children and buried a husband, possessed an intuitive understanding of people that went beyond mere conversation. As she helped Kate unpack her modest belongings, she noticed details that did not quite align with the story of a simple seamstress seeking marriage. The traveling bag contained clothes that, while not expensive, showed signs of careful maintenance and practical considerations. More telling were the small items tucked between the dresses, a leather-bound journal filled with detailed notes. In precise handwriting, a small collection of medical instruments wrapped in soft cloth, and several books whose titles suggested knowledge far beyond what any seamstress would require. That evening, as Dr. Bennett walked Kate through the town to introduce her to the community, Millbrook Falls presented itself at its most charming. The setting sun painted the mountains in shades of gold and purple, while the sound of the Clearwater River provided a constant, soothing backdrop. They stopped at Stone's General Store, where Margaret Stone, the formidable woman who seemed to know everything that happened within 50 miles, welcomed Kate with the thorough inspection that every potential new resident received. Margaret Stone had been running the general store for 15 years, serving as unofficial banker, post office, and information center for the entire community. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, and her questions, while friendly, had the precision of someone accustomed to evaluating people quickly. She noticed the way Kate examined the medical supplies displayed behind the counter, how her fingers moved unconsciously to check the quality of bandages and the freshness of certain medicines. When Kate casually mentioned that Dr. Bennett must find it challenging to maintain adequate supplies so far from major cities, Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly at the sophistication of the observation. The tour continued to St. Mary's Church, where Father Michael O'Brien greeted them with the warm enthusiasm of a man genuinely delighted to see his community growing. The Irish priest had arrived in Millbrook Falls 5 years earlier, and his easy humor and practical approach to frontier spirituality had made him beloved by Catholics and Protestants alike. As they spoke, Kate mentioned her experience helping with church charity work, describing her assistance with sick parishioners in terms that made Father O'Brien glance thoughtfully at Dr. Bennett. During their walk, Dr. Bennett found himself increasingly intrigued by his bride-to-be. Her questions about his medical practice were informed and insightful, suggesting either extensive reading or personal experience with healthcare. When he mentioned the challenges of treating certain conditions with limited resources, she offered observations that demonstrated an understanding of medical principles that surprised him. Yet whenever he probed gently for details about her background, her answers became more general, as if she were carefully steering the conversation away from specifics. The first hint of trouble came 3 days after Kate's arrival, when the eastbound train brought news that would change everything. Sheriff William Carter received a telegram that made his weathered face go pale as he read it twice before walking quickly to Dr. Bennett's office. The message was brief but devastating. Cholera had been confirmed in 3 towns along the railroad line, and cases were spreading westward with terrifying speed. Dr. Bennett was examining old Mrs. Patterson's rheumatism when Sheriff Carter knocked on his door, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled urgency. The two men had known each other for nearly a decade, and Dr. Bennett immediately recognized the signs of serious trouble in his friend's expression. Sheriff Carter handed over the telegram without preamble, watching as the doctor's face grew grave while reading the official warning from the territorial health authorities. Cholera was a word that struck fear into every frontier community. Unlike other diseases that claimed lives gradually, cholera could kill within hours of the first symptoms appearing. Entire towns had been wiped out by epidemics that spread faster. The news could travel, leaving behind only empty buildings and hastily dug mass graves. The disease showed no mercy for age, constitution, or social standing, striking down the healthy as quickly as the weak. Dr. Bennett immediately began calculating supplies and procedures, his mind racing through everything he knew about treating and containing the disease. Millbrook Falls had never faced anything more serious than the occasional outbreak of influenza or the injuries that came with mining and railroad work. His small practice, while adequate for the town's normal needs, would be completely overwhelmed if cholera reached their community. That evening, he found himself walking to the Riverside Inn, ostensibly to inform Kate of the potential danger, but actually seeking the comfort of her presence during a moment of overwhelming responsibility. He found her on the inn's front porch, reading by lamplight, and as he approached, she looked up with an expression that seemed to anticipate bad news. When he explained the situation, describing the approaching epidemic and the town's vulnerability, Kate listened with an intensity that went beyond polite concern. Her questions were specific and technical, focusing on symptoms, transmission methods, and treatment protocols with a precision that made Dr. Bennett pause mid-explanation. She seemed to understand the medical implications faster than he could explain them, and her suggestions for immediate preparations demonstrated knowledge that no casual reading could provide. "Dr. Bennett," she said quietly, setting down her book, "how many cases of cholera have you personally treated?" The directness of her question caught him off guard, and he found himself admitting that his experience with the disease was limited to textbook study and consultation with colleagues who had faced previous outbreaks. Her response was equally direct. "Then you will need help from someone who has seen it firsthand." The admission hung between them in the mountain air like a confession waiting to be acknowledged. Dr. Bennett studied her face in the lamplight, seeing something in her expression that suggested depths he had not yet discovered. "Miss Walsh," he said carefully, "what exactly is your experience with cholera?" Kate was quiet for a long moment, her hands folded in her lap as she seemed to weigh her response. Finally, she met his eyes with a directness that surprised him. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dr. Bennett, there are things about my background that I have not shared with you. Given what is coming to your town, I believe it is time for complete honesty between us." The truth began to emerge on the fourth night after Kate's arrival as she and Dr. Bennett sat in his office surrounded by medical texts and supply inventories. The approaching cholera epidemic had transformed their courtship into an urgent collaboration, and the pretense of casual acquaintance had given way to the frank discussion of two people facing a crisis together. Catherine Walsh, as she finally revealed, was not the simple seamstress from Pennsylvania that her letters had described. Her real name was indeed Catherine Walsh, but her background was far more complex and relevant to their current situation than Dr. Bennett could have imagined. She had spent 3 years working as a nurse in Union field hospitals during the final stages of the Civil War, where she had gained experience treating diseases and injuries that most trained physicians never encountered. The revelation came in careful stages, as if she were testing his reaction to each piece of information before continuing. She described her work at Antietam and Gettysburg, where she had assisted surgeons in conditions that made frontier medicine seem luxurious. By comparison, She had seen cholera sweep through military camps, had learned to recognize the early symptoms that could mean the difference between life and death, and had developed treatment protocols that went beyond anything found in standard medical texts. Dr. Bennett listened with growing amazement as Kate described techniques for maintaining hydration in cholera patients, methods for disinfecting contaminated areas, and organizational systems for managing large numbers of cases simultaneously. Her knowledge was practical and detailed, born from experience rather than study, and it far exceeded his own understanding of epidemic management. But her story carried darker elements that explained the wariness he had noticed from their first meeting. After the war, Kate had attempted to continue her medical work in civilian hospitals, only to discover that her skills and experience were unwelcome in a profession that considered nursing a temporary wartime necessity rather than a legitimate career for women. She had been dismissed from positions, denied opportunities, and eventually forced to support herself through work that utilized none of her abilities. The decision to respond to Dr. Bennett's advertisement had been born from desperation rather than romance. Kate had seen marriage to a frontier physician as her only opportunity to return to meaningful medical work, even if it meant deceiving a good man about her intentions. She had crafted her letters carefully, presenting herself as someone who would appreciate and support his work without revealing that she intended to participate in it directly. Dr. Bennett absorbed this information while studying the woman who had traveled 2,000 miles to deceive him into marriage. Yet as he considered her revelations, he found himself feeling not betrayed, but grateful. The approaching epidemic would require every resource the town could muster, and Kate's experience could mean the difference between containing the disease and watching it devastate their community. "Your letters mentioned supporting my work," he said finally. "I believe you may have understated your qualifications for that role." Kate smiled for the first time since beginning her confession, and Dr. Bennett saw in that expression a glimpse of the woman she had been before circumstances forced her to hide her true capabilities. The next morning brought news that transformed their theoretical discussions into immediate reality. Deputy James Foster rode into town before dawn with word that 3 miners working the claims 15 miles upstream had fallen ill with symptoms that matched the cholera warnings. They had been brought to the mining camp's makeshift infirmary, but the camp supervisor was requesting medical assistance and considering evacuation to Millbrook Falls. Dr. Bennett and Kate rode out to the mining camp within the hour, their medical supplies packed in saddlebags, along with every text on epidemic disease that Dr. Bennett possessed. The ride through the mountain forest gave them time to discuss their approach, and Kate's transformation from demure bride-to-be into confident medical professional was remarkable to witness. She outlined protocols for examining the patients, procedures for preventing further spread, and contingency plans for various scenarios, with the authority of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions under pressure. The mining camp was a collection of rough buildings and tents clustered around the dig sites where men worked to extract silver from the mountain rock. The supervisor, a gruff veteran named Pete Morrison, met them with the harried expression of someone dealing with a situation beyond his experience. He led them to the infirmary, a converted storage building where 3 men lay on crude cots, their faces pale, and their bodies racked with the violent symptoms that Dr. Bennett recognized. From his textbook studies, Kate examined the patients with efficiency that amazed both Dr. Bennett and Morrison. She checked pulse rates, assessed dehydration levels, and evaluated symptoms with practiced movements that spoke of extensive experience. Her questions were specific and directed, designed to gather information quickly while minimizing exposure to the disease. Within minutes, she had confirmed what they all feared. This was indeed cholera, and it was likely to spread rapidly through the camp if immediate action was not taken. The next several hours became a crash course in epidemic management as Kate guided Dr. Bennett through procedures for isolating patients, disinfecting contaminated areas, and organizing the camp to prevent further transmission. She demonstrated techniques for preparing rehydration solutions, showed him how to monitor patients for specific danger signs, and established protocols for managing supplies and personnel that transformed chaos into organized response. Morrison watched their collaboration with growing respect and curiosity. It was obvious that Kate possessed knowledge and skills that went far beyond what any ordinary woman would have, yet her partnership with Dr. Bennett seemed natural and seamless. When Morrison commented on her unusual expertise, Kate simply said that she had assisted with similar situations before, leaving the specifics deliberately vague. By evening, they had stabilized the 3 patients and implemented containment measures that had prevented new cases from appearing. The ride back to Millbrook Falls gave Dr. Bennett time to fully appreciate what Kate had accomplished. Her quick action and expert knowledge had likely prevented the epidemic from spreading through the mining camp, and her techniques had given the patients their best chance of survival. As they approached the town, Dr. Bennett made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. "Miss Walsh," he said, "I believe we need to discuss revising our arrangement. Your skills are far too valuable to waste on conventional marriage expectations." Kate looked at him with surprise and something that might have been hope. "What are you suggesting, Dr. Bennett?" "I am suggesting," he replied, "that Millbrook Falls needs a medical team, not just a doctor with a supportive wife. If you are willing, I would like to propose a partnership that acknowledges your full capabilities." The conversation that followed established the foundation for everything that would come after. They discussed practical arrangements, professional responsibilities, and the challenges they would face from a community that had never seen a woman function as a medical professional. Kate revealed more details about her background, describing her training, her experience, and her hopes for being able to use her skills openly again. Dr. Bennett found himself reconsidering everything he had believed about marriage, partnership, and the practice of medicine. The woman riding beside him represented possibilities he had never imagined, and the approaching epidemic would test not only their medical skills, but their ability to work together under extreme pressure. As they reached the outskirts of Millbrook Falls, Kate asked the question that had been unspoken between them since her revelations began. "Dr. Bennett, are you certain you want to associate your practice with someone who has misrepresented herself so completely?" Dr. Bennett considered his response carefully. "Miss Walsh," he said finally, "I believe you may have misrepresented your background, but you have not misrepresented your character. The woman who spent today saving lives at considerable personal risk is exactly the partner I hope to find, even if she is not quite the woman I expected to meet." That night, as word spread through Millbrook Falls about the cholera cases at the mining camp, the town began to prepare for the crisis that everyone knew was coming. Dr. Bennett and Kate worked late into the evening, organizing supplies, planning procedures, and discussing strategies for managing an epidemic in a community. With limited resources, Margaret Stone arrived at the medical office after closing her store, her arms full of supplies and her expression determined. "I heard about the mining camp," she announced. "Whatever you need, we will find a way to provide it." Behind her came Father O'Brien, Sheriff Carter, Mrs. Hayes, and others, each offering assistance and resources without being asked. Kate watched this spontaneous mobilization with amazement. In her experience, communities facing epidemic disease usually responded with panic and selfishness, yet Millbrook Falls seemed to be rallying together with remarkable unity. Dr. Bennett, observing her surprise, smiled slightly. "This is why I chose to practice here," he explained. "These people understand that they are stronger together than apart." As the evening progressed, Kate found herself taking a leading role in organizing the community response. Her experience with epidemic management proved invaluable as she helped establish quarantine procedures, organized supply distribution, and trained volunteers in basic medical assistance. The people of Millbrook Falls accepted her authority with surprising ease, perhaps recognizing that expertise was more important than convention during a crisis. By midnight, they had transformed Dr. Bennett's small practice into the command center for the town's epidemic response. Maps marked potential quarantine areas, supply lists covered every available surface, and volunteers had been assigned specific responsibilities for everything from patient care to communication with neighboring communities. Standing in the midst of this organized preparation, Kate felt something she had not experienced since leaving the military hospitals: the satisfaction of using her skills for their intended purpose. Dr. Bennett, watching her direct the final preparations, realized that his advertisement for a supportive wife had brought him something far more valuable: a true partner in the work he had chosen as his life's calling. The crisis that would test both their skills and their relationship was approaching fast, carried on the railroad lines that connected Millbrook Falls to the wider world. But as they prepared to face the epidemic together, both Dr. Bennett and Kate understood that they had found something neither had expected to discover: a partnership based not on conventional expectations, but on shared purpose and mutual respect. The dawn of their 5th day in partnership brought the sound that Dr. Bennett had been dreading since the first telegram arrived. The whistle of the morning freight train carried an unusual urgency, its long blast echoing off the mountain walls, in a pattern that the railroad workers used to signal emergency. Within minutes, Deputy Foster was riding hard toward the medical office, his horse's hooves striking sparks from the rocky road as he brought news that would transform their careful preparations into desperate reality. Dr. Samuel Morrison, the retired physician who had been traveling through the territory, documenting medical conditions in frontier communities, stepped down from the freight car with the weary expression of a man who had seen too much death in too short a time. His once pristine traveling clothes were stained with evidence of his recent work, and his medical bag showed signs of constant use. Behind him, railroad workers unloaded 3 makeshift stretchers carrying passengers who had fallen ill during the journey from Denver. Morrison found Dr. Bennett and Kate in the medical office, where they had spent the night reviewing patient care protocols and organizing supplies. The older physician's eyes immediately fixed on Kate, with the sharp attention of someone accustomed to reading people quickly. Her presence in the medical office, her familiarity with the equipment, and her obvious partnership with Dr. Bennett clearly surprised him, but his expression showed professional curiosity rather than disapproval. "Dr. Bennett," Morrison said without preamble, "I have traveled through 4 towns in the past week, and what I have seen will haunt me until my dying day. The cholera outbreak has exceeded everyone's worst predictions. Denver has lost over 200 souls, and smaller communities are being completely devastated. I was hoping to find refuge here, but I see you are preparing for the same battle." Kate stepped forward with the confidence that had become natural to her over the past few days. "Dr. Morrison, I am Catherine Walsh. Dr. Bennett and I have been organizing the town's response to the approaching epidemic. Perhaps you could share your recent observations to help us refine our preparations." Morrison studied Kate with growing interest as she asked specific questions about transmission patterns, treatment successes and failures, and resource management in affected communities. Her questions demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of epidemic medicine that clearly impressed the experienced physician. When she mentioned techniques for managing severe dehydration cases, Morrison's eyebrows rose in recognition. "Miss Walsh," he said carefully, "your knowledge suggests more than casual study. Have you perhaps had medical training?" The moment had arrived for Kate to reveal her background to someone from the broader medical community, and she felt Dr. Bennett's supportive presence beside her as she made her decision. Dr. Morrison. I served as a nurse in Union Field hospitals during the war, where I gained extensive experience with cholera outbreaks among military populations. Dr. Bennett and I have formed a medical partnership to address this crisis. Morrison's reaction was immediate and telling. Instead of the dismissal or skepticism that Kate had learned to expect from established physicians, his face showed relief and professional respect. "Miss Walsh," he said, "I have been hoping to find someone with your experience. The techniques being used in most frontier communities are inadequate for the severity of this outbreak. Your military medical background may be exactly what this region needs." The three physicians spent the morning examining the patients who had arrived on the freight train, and Kate's expertise became immediately apparent. She recognized symptom patterns that the others missed, identified complications before they became critical, and demonstrated treatment techniques that proved more effective than conventional approaches. Dr. Morrison watched her work with growing admiration, occasionally asking questions that revealed his respect for her skills. By afternoon, word had spread through Millbrook Falls that the cholera had officially arrived in their community. Rather than the panic that might have been expected, the town responded with the organized determination that had been building over the past week. Margaret Stone converted the back room of her store into a supply distribution center, coordinating donations and purchases with military efficiency. Father O'Brien organized volunteers to assist with patient care, drawing on the natural compassion of his parishioners while ensuring that proper precautions were maintained. Mrs. Hayes proved particularly valuable as a coordinator of nursing assistants. Her experience managing the inn had taught her to organize complex operations smoothly, and she quickly established systems for managing volunteer schedules, maintaining quarantine procedures, and ensuring that families remained connected with isolated patients. Her calm authority helped prevent the chaos that often accompanied epidemic outbreaks in frontier communities. Sheriff Carter's role evolved into something resembling a military commander as he coordinated communication with surrounding communities, managed the movement of people and supplies, and maintained order during a crisis that could easily have dissolved into panic. His steady presence reassured the townspeople, while his practical decisions ensured that essential services continued to function despite the growing emergency. As the first week of the epidemic progressed, the partnership between Dr. Bennett and Kate deepened beyond professional collaboration into something approaching telepathic cooperation. They developed a rhythm of working together that maximized both their strengths, with Dr. Bennett handling surgical procedures and complex diagnoses, while Kate managed patient care protocols and epidemic containment measures. Their different backgrounds and training styles complemented each other perfectly, creating a medical team that was more effective than either could have been alone. Dr. Morrison remained in Millbrook Falls to assist with the crisis, and his presence provided valuable validation for Kate's role in the medical team. When curious visitors or concerned family members questioned a woman's authority in medical matters, Morrison's enthusiastic endorsement of her expertise quickly silenced objections. His willingness to defer to her judgment in areas where her experience exceeded his own demonstrated to the community that professional competence mattered more than social conventions during a life-and-death crisis. The first major test of their partnership came when a family of 6 recent arrivals from Kansas developed symptoms simultaneously. The Henderson family had arrived in Millbrook Falls just days before the epidemic began, seeking mining opportunities and a fresh start after losing their farm to drought. When the father, mother, and 4 children all fell ill within hours of each other, the case presented complexities that required every technique Kate had learned during her military service. Managing multiple critical patients in a single family required careful coordination of resources and constant monitoring of changing conditions. Kate established a system for tracking each patient's progress individually while maintaining overall family care protocols that kept the cases from overwhelming. The medical team's capacity. Her ability to train family members and volunteers to provide appropriate assistance allowed the medical professionals to focus on the most critical decisions while ensuring that all patients received adequate attention. Dr. Bennett observed Kate's management of the Henderson family crisis with growing appreciation for skills he was only beginning to understand. Her ability to remain calm under extreme pressure, make rapid decisions with incomplete information, and coordinate complex care protocols demonstrated leadership abilities that went far beyond medical knowledge. She had clearly been trained for exactly these kinds of crisis situations, and her confidence in managing them provided stability for everyone involved in the response effort. The emotional aspects of epidemic medicine proved as challenging as the technical requirements. Kate found herself counseling families who were watching loved ones suffer from a disease they did not understand, comforting children who had been separated from sick parents, and providing hope to patients who faced an uncertain prognosis. Her experience with military medicine had prepared her for the psychological dimensions of treating large numbers of seriously ill people, but the intimate nature of small-town relationships added complexity that she had not previously encountered. Dr. Bennett's role in providing emotional support proved equally important as his medical expertise. His relationships with families throughout the community gave him insights into individual personalities and family dynamics that helped personalize care decisions. His gentle manner and genuine concern for his patients' well-being provided comfort that purely technical medical care could not address. The community's response to the epidemic continued to exceed everyone's expectations. Families opened their homes to quarantined patients whose own residences were unsuitable for isolation. Business owners donated supplies and services without being asked. Individuals with no medical training volunteered for difficult and dangerous work simply because it needed to be done. The crisis was bringing out qualities in the townspeople that surprised even those who had lived among them for years. Margaret Stone's leadership in resource management proved particularly crucial as the epidemic stretched the community's capacity to respond. She established systems for tracking supplies, coordinating volunteer efforts, and maintaining communication with families throughout the affected area. Her store became the unofficial headquarters for non-medical aspects of the crisis response, and her practical intelligence ensured that logistical problems did not interfere with patient care. Father O'Brien's spiritual leadership provided comfort that complemented the medical care, but his practical contributions proved equally valuable. His church became a communication center where families could receive updates about quarantined relatives, and his parishioners formed the backbone of the volunteer nursing staff. His ability to maintain hope while acknowledging the seriousness of the crisis helped prevent the despair that could have paralyzed the community's response efforts. As the second week of the epidemic began, patterns started to emerge that demonstrated the effectiveness of their coordinated response. The death rate in Millbrook Falls remained significantly lower than what Dr. Morrison had observed in other affected communities, and new cases were appearing less frequently than the initial projections had suggested. The combination of Kate's advanced treatment techniques, Dr. Bennett's surgical skills, and the community's organized support system was proving more effective than anyone had dared to hope. However, success brought new challenges that tested different aspects of their partnership. Word of Millbrook Falls' relative success in managing the epidemic began to attract refugees from less fortunate communities. Families who had lost homes, and loved ones, to cholera arrived seeking both medical care and safe haven, straining resources that had been calculated for the town's original population. Kate found herself facing decisions about resource allocation that had no clear right answers. Should they accept additional patients at the risk of overwhelming their capacity to care for existing cases? How could they maintain the quarantine? Procedures that had proven effective while accommodating desperate refugees who had nowhere else to go. Her military experience had taught her to make difficult choices quickly, but the humanitarian aspects of epidemic medicine complicated every decision. Dr. Bennett struggled with similar dilemmas from a different perspective. His natural inclination was to help everyone who sought medical care, but his responsibility to the community that had entrusted him with their health required more calculated decisions. The partnership with Kate gave him access to expertise that improved his medical effectiveness, but it also forced him to confront limitations that challenged his fundamental beliefs about medical practice. The arrival of territorial health officials during the third week brought external validation for their methods, but also introduced political complications that neither Kate nor Dr. Bennett had anticipated. The officials were impressed by Millbrook Falls' success in containing the epidemic, but they were also curious about the unorthodox medical partnership that seemed to be responsible for the positive outcomes. Dr. Edmund Blackwood, the Territorial Health Commissioner, arrived with preconceived notions about frontier medical practice that Kate's role immediately challenged. His initial assumption that she was simply a helpful nurse quickly gave way to confusion as he observed her authority in making medical decisions and her obvious expertise in epidemic management. His questions became increasingly pointed as he tried to understand how a woman had come to occupy such a prominent position in medical practice. Kate handled the official scrutiny with the same calm competence she brought to patient care, answering questions about her background and methods without defensiveness, while demonstrating her expertise through actions rather than arguments. Dr. Morrison's continued presence proved invaluable during these interactions, as his willingness to vouch for Kate's abilities carried weight with officials who might otherwise have been skeptical. Dr. Bennett found himself defending their partnership, not only on professional grounds, but also on moral principles that he had not previously been forced to articulate. The crisis had taught him that effective medical care required utilizing every available resource, regardless of social conventions, and he argued passionately that competence should be the only qualification that mattered during an epidemic. The territorial officials ultimately endorsed their methods and recommended that other communities adopt similar approaches. But the experience highlighted the broader challenges that Kate would face if she chose to continue practicing medicine. After the epidemic ended, the frontier's desperate need for medical expertise created opportunities that might not exist in more established regions. But it also meant constant scrutiny from those who viewed women's participation in medicine as temporary expediency rather than legitimate professional advancement. As the fourth week began, the epidemic showed clear signs of subsiding in Millbrook Falls. New cases were becoming rare, existing patients were recovering at encouraging rates, and the community was beginning to discuss plans for returning to normal activities. The success of their response had exceeded everyone's most optimistic projections, and the partnership between Dr. Bennett and Kate had proven itself under the most demanding conditions imaginable. However, the approaching end of the crisis raised questions about the future that neither Kate nor Dr. Bennett had yet addressed directly. Their professional partnership had developed naturally during the emergency, but its continuation would require decisions about their personal relationship that went beyond medical practice. The community had accepted Kate's authority during the epidemic, but her long-term role in Millbrook Falls remained undefined. Kate spent long hours considering her options as the immediate crisis began to fade. Her original plan to marry Dr. Bennett, in order to gain access to medical practice, had been superseded by events, but the question of their relationship still required resolution. She had found in Millbrook Falls the opportunity to use her skills fully and the professional partnership she had never dared to hope for, but she was uncertain whether these achievements could survive the transition back to peacetime conditions. Dr. Bennett faced equally complex decisions about the future. His partnership with Kate had transformed his understanding of medical practice and his appreciation for professional collaboration. But it had also challenged fundamental assumptions about marriage, partnership, and professional relationships that he was still struggling to reconcile. The woman he had expected to marry had proven to be someone entirely different from his initial expectations, and he was unsure how to proceed with a relationship that had evolved far beyond its original parameters. The community of Millbrook Falls had been transformed by the epidemic in ways that extended far beyond medical outcomes. The crisis had revealed strengths and capabilities that residents had not known they possessed, and the successful response had created a sense of collective pride and confidence that would influence the town's development for years to come. The partnership between Dr. Bennett and Kate had become a symbol of what could be accomplished when convention gave way to competence and necessity drove innovation. As they prepared for the next phase of their relationship, both professional and personal, Kate and Dr. Bennett understood that they had participated in something larger than a successful medical response. They had demonstrated that partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose could overcome social barriers and create outcomes that exceeded what either could have achieved alone. The epidemic had tested their skills, their judgment, and their ability to work together under extreme pressure, and they had emerged with a deeper understanding of both their individual capabilities and their potential as a team. The fifth week brought challenges that neither medical textbooks nor military field hospitals had prepared Kate to face. Word of Millbrook Falls' success in containing the cholera epidemic had spread throughout the Colorado Territory, carried by railroad workers, territorial officials, and desperate families seeking hope. What arrived on the morning train that Tuesday was not another group of refugees, but something far more dangerous. 3 men wearing the badges of the Territorial Medical Board, accompanied by Dr. Harrison Whitmore from the Denver Medical College. Dr. Whitmore stepped onto the platform with the bearing of a man accustomed to unquestioned authority. His expensive Eastern clothing and perfectly groomed appearance stood in stark contrast to the practical frontier attire worn by everyone else in Millbrook Falls. Behind him, the board members carried leather portfolios filled with official documents and regulations that could determine the future of medical practice throughout the territory. Kate watched their arrival from the window of the medical office, her trained eye immediately recognizing the threat they represented. Dr. Whitmore's reputation had reached even the military hospitals where she had served during the war. He was known for his rigid adherence to conventional medical practices and his vocal opposition to any deviation from established protocols. His presence in Millbrook Falls could only mean that reports of their unorthodox partnership had reached Denver, and the medical establishment was preparing to assert control. Dr. Bennett joined Kate at the window, his expression growing grave as he recognized the implications of their visitors. The Territorial Medical Board possessed the authority to revoke medical licenses, close practices, and impose restrictions that could effectively end their partnership. Worse, they could recommend criminal charges against anyone they deemed to be practicing medicine without proper credentials, a category that might include Kate despite her extensive experience and proven competence. The confrontation began within hours of the officials' arrival. Dr. Whitmore demanded a formal meeting with Dr. Bennett to discuss what he termed irregularities in medical practice protocols that had been reported to the territorial authorities. His manner was polite but coldly professional, and his questions quickly revealed that he had been briefed extensively on Kate's role in managing the epidemic response. Dr. Bennett found himself defending not only his partnership with Kate, but also the fundamental principle that competence should outweigh credentials during a medical emergency. He presented detailed records of their patient outcomes, survival rates that exceeded those achieved in more conventional medical settings, and testimonials from Dr. Morrison and other respected physicians who had observed their work firsthand. Kate remained present during these discussions despite Dr. Whitmore's obvious disapproval of her participation. Her calm professionalism in the face of his hostility demonstrated the same courage that had enabled her to function effectively in battlefield conditions. When Dr. Whitmore questioned her qualifications directly, she responded by describing specific cases they had managed together, detailing treatment decisions and outcomes with precision that impressed even the skeptical board members. The investigation expanded beyond the medical office as Dr. Whitmore and his colleagues interviewed patients, family members, and community leaders about their experiences during the epidemic. What they discovered contradicted their preconceptions about frontier medical practice and female participation in healthcare. Patient after patient testified to Kate's skill, compassion, and effectiveness in treating conditions that had defeated less experienced practitioners. Margaret Stone proved particularly eloquent in defending Kate's contributions to the community's survival. Standing in her store, surrounded by the supplies that had sustained the epidemic response, she challenged Dr. Whitmore's assumptions about women's capabilities with the authority of someone who had witnessed extraordinary circumstances firsthand. Her testimony carried weight because of her reputation for practical wisdom and her obvious lack of sentimental bias. Father O'Brien's support for Kate came from a different perspective, but proved equally powerful. Speaking from the pulpit of St. Mary's Church, he described her work in terms of Christian charity and divine providence, arguing that God's gifts of healing should be recognized regardless of the vessel through which they were delivered. His theological framework for understanding Kate's role provided a moral foundation that complemented the medical evidence of her competence. Sheriff Carter's endorsement focused on the practical results achieved through the medical partnership. From his perspective as the official responsible for maintaining order during the crisis, Kate's contributions had been essential to preventing the chaos and lawlessness that often accompanied epidemic outbreaks. Her ability to organize complex operations under extreme pressure had impressed him as much as her medical skills. Mrs. Hayes offered insights into Kate's character that went beyond professional competence. Having observed her daily interactions with patients and families, she testified to Kate's genuine compassion, her willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for others' welfare, and her ability to provide hope during the darkest moments of the crisis. Her observations carried particular weight because of her reputation for sound judgment about people's character. The testimonials created an unexpected problem for Dr. Whitmore and the medical board. They had arrived expecting to find clear violations of established medical protocols that could be easily corrected through official intervention. Instead, they discovered a successful medical partnership that had achieved outcomes superior to conventional practices while operating within the bounds of emergency medical ethics. Dr. Morrison's presence in Millbrook Falls provided crucial support for Kate's position during the investigation. His standing within the territorial medical community gave him credibility that Dr. Whitmore could not easily dismiss, and his detailed observations of their work provided professional validation for their methods. When Dr. Whitmore questioned The propriety of allowing women to make medical decisions, Dr. Morrison responded with examples of Kate's diagnostic accuracy and treatment innovations that had impressed him as much as any physician's work he had observed. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Mrs. Sarah Chen arrived on the evening train, bringing with her documentation that would transform the entire discussion. Mrs. Chen, the widow of a Union Army surgeon, had traveled from Colorado Springs specifically to testify on Kate's behalf after hearing about the medical board's investigation. She carried with her Dr. Chen's wartime correspondence, which included detailed descriptions of Kate's work in military hospitals and formal recommendations for her advanced training in epidemic medicine. Dr. Chen's letters revealed that Kate's military service had included responsibilities far beyond those typically assigned to nurses. She had been selected for special training in epidemic management by senior medical officers who recognized her exceptional abilities, and she had received instruction in treatment protocols that were considered advanced even by military standards. Her experience treating cholera in military camps had included research into improved treatment methods that had subsequently been adopted by other medical units. The correspondence also revealed that Kate's post-war difficulties in finding medical employment had resulted not from lack of qualifications, but from deliberate discrimination against women who had proven themselves capable of advanced medical practice. Dr. Chen had attempted to secure positions for her in civilian hospitals, but his recommendations had been ignored by administrators who preferred to maintain conventional staffing patterns regardless of competence. Dr. Whitmore's investigation was further complicated by the arrival of territorial health statistics that demonstrated Millbrook Falls' exceptional success in managing the cholera epidemic. The mortality rates achieved under Kate and Dr. Bennett's partnership were significantly lower than those recorded in communities using conventional treatment protocols. The data suggested that their methods might be superior to established practices, rather than dangerous deviations from medical orthodoxy. The board members found themselves facing a dilemma that their regulations had not anticipated. Kate's medical practice clearly violated conventional standards for women's participation in healthcare, but her results exceeded those achieved by licensed male physicians using approved methods. Closing down a medical partnership that had saved lives and prevented epidemic spread would be difficult to justify to territorial authorities who were primarily concerned with protecting public health. Dr. Bennett used this period of investigation to formalize his partnership with Kate in ways that would provide legal protection for their continued collaboration. He petitioned the territorial authorities to recognize Kate as his official medical assistant, a position that would give her legal standing to continue practicing medicine under his supervision. The petition included endorsements from every physician who had observed their work together, as well as testimonials from patients and community leaders. Kate's response to the investigation revealed the strength of character that had enabled her to survive wartime medical service and post-war discrimination. Rather than defending herself apologetically, she presented her qualifications and achievements with quiet confidence, allowing her work to speak for itself while maintaining professional dignity in the face of obvious prejudice. Her calm competence during the inquiry impressed even Dr. Whitmore's most skeptical colleagues. The community of Millbrook Falls rallied behind Kate with unprecedented unity. Business owners offered financial support for legal challenges, families volunteered to testify about her medical care of their relatives, and civic leaders formally petitioned the territorial government to recognize her contributions to public health. The epidemic had created bonds between Kate and the community that transcended conventional social boundaries. The turning point in the investigation came when Dr. Whitmore himself required medical attention after developing symptoms that initially appeared to suggest cholera exposure. Kate's examination and treatment of the man who had come to discredit her provided a dramatic demonstration of her medical skills that no amount of testimony could have equaled. Her professional care of someone who had questioned her qualifications displayed both competence and character that even Dr. Whitmore could not ignore. The diagnosis revealed that Dr. Whitmore's symptoms resulted from a digestive ailment rather than cholera, but Kate's methodical examination process and careful, differential diagnosis impressed him with its thoroughness and accuracy. Her treatment recommendations proved effective, and her follow-up care demonstrated attention to detail that matched anything he had observed in major medical centers. Dr. Whitmore's illness also provided him with first-hand experience of the medical partnership that he had come to investigate. He observed the seamless collaboration between Kate and Dr. Bennett, their complementary skills and shared decision-making process, and the obvious mutual respect that characterized their professional relationship. What he had expected to find as an irregular arrangement revealed itself as a highly effective medical team. The investigation concluded with a formal hearing where all testimony and evidence were presented to the Territorial Medical Board for final determination. Kate appeared before the board not as a defendant, but as a medical professional, presenting her qualifications and achievements for official recognition. Her presentation was systematic and thorough, demonstrating not only her medical knowledge, but also her understanding of the legal and ethical frameworks within which she sought to practice. Dr. Bennett's presentation focused on the practical benefits of their partnership to the community they served. He argued that frontier medical practice required flexibility and innovation that went beyond conventional urban standards, and that the territorial government should support medical approaches that achieved superior outcomes regardless of their conformity to established patterns. The community's representation at the hearing demonstrated the depth of support that Kate had earned through her service during the epidemic. Speaker after speaker testified to specific instances where her medical intervention had saved lives or prevented suffering, creating a record of achievement that the board could not easily dismiss. The testimonials revealed not only her medical competence, but also her integration into the community as a trusted healthcare provider. Dr. Morrison's final testimony provided professional context for the board's decision by comparing Kate's work to medical practice in other frontier communities. His observations demonstrated that the partnership between Kate and Dr. Bennett had achieved outcomes that exceeded regional standards and approached those found in major medical centers. His recommendation for official recognition of their collaboration carried significant weight within the territorial medical establishment. The board's deliberation extended over 3 days, during which the members reviewed all testimony, examined patient records, and consulted with territorial health officials about the implications of their decision. Their final ruling would establish precedents for medical practice throughout the Colorado Territory and potentially influence healthcare policy in other frontier regions. The decision, when it finally came, surprised everyone involved in the investigation. Rather than simply approving or rejecting Kate's medical practice, the board established new categories of medical credentials that recognized specialized experience in epidemic management and frontier healthcare. Kate was granted official recognition as a territorial medical specialist, a designation that gave her legal authority to practice medicine in partnership with licensed physicians. The new credentials required Kate to complete formal examinations that would test her medical knowledge against established standards, but her wartime experience and demonstrated competence during the cholera epidemic provided sufficient foundation for immediate provisional recognition. The board's decision acknowledged that frontier medical needs required flexibility in credentialing, while maintaining standards for patient safety and professional competence. Dr. Bennett's role in creating this precedent was recognized through his appointment as a regional supervisor for frontier medical partnerships. His success in collaborating with Kate and his advocacy for competence-based medical practice made him a natural choice for guiding similar arrangements in other underserved communities throughout the territory. The resolution of the medical board investigation transformed Kate's position in Millbrook Falls from unofficial helper to recognized medical professional. Her new credentials provided legal protection for her continued practice, while acknowledging the unique circumstances that had led to her medical career. The precedent established by her case would eventually influence medical education and credentialing throughout the American frontier. As news of the board's decisions spread through Millbrook Falls, the community celebrated not only Kate's personal victory, but also the recognition of their collective judgment in supporting her medical practice. The investigation had vindicated their trust in competence over convention and established their town as a model for progressive medical care in frontier communities. The partnership between Kate and Dr. Bennett had survived its greatest test and emerged stronger than ever. Their collaboration had been officially recognized, legally protected, and professionally validated by the highest medical authorities in the territory. What had begun as a desperate wartime necessity had evolved into a new model for medical practice that would influence healthcare delivery throughout the developing American West. The autumn winds carried more than the scent of changing leaves through Millbrook Falls as October settled over the mountains. 3 months had passed since the medical board's groundbreaking decision, and the town had found its new rhythm around. The officially recognized medical partnership between Dr. Bennett and Kate. Yet with professional recognition secured, personal questions that had been set aside during the crisis now demanded attention from both partners, who had discovered that their carefully planned arrangement bore little resemblance to the relationship that had actually developed. Kate stood at the window of her new office, a converted room in Dr. Bennett's medical building that had been transformed into a proper examination space with equipment specifically designed for her specialized practice. The territorial government had provided funding for expanded medical facilities in recognition of Millbrook Falls' role as a model for frontier healthcare, and Kate's credentialed status had made her eligible for resources that would never have been available to an unofficial helper. The changes in her daily routine reflected the profound transformation of her position in the community. Patients now scheduled appointments specifically to see her, seeking her expertise in epidemic prevention, women's health concerns, and complex medical conditions that required her particular background. Her consultation schedule filled weeks in advance, as word spread throughout the territory about the woman physician who had earned official recognition for her unconventional path to medical practice. Dr. Bennett observed these developments with a mixture of professional pride and personal confusion that he struggled to articulate even to himself. The woman he had expected to marry had become a colleague whose skills often exceeded his own, whose reputation drew patients from across the territory, and whose professional independence made their original correspondence seem almost quaint. In its assumptions about their future relationship, their working partnership had evolved into something more sophisticated than either had anticipated. They consulted on difficult cases with the ease of physicians who had trained together for years, dividing responsibilities based on expertise rather than conventional gender roles. Kate's specialization in epidemic medicine and women's health complemented Dr. Bennett's surgical skills and general practice experience, creating a medical team that could address almost any healthcare challenge the frontier might present. However, the personal dimension of their relationship remained undefined in ways that created awkwardness neither quite knew how to address. They maintained separate living arrangements, with Kate renting a small house near the medical offices, while Dr. Bennett continued to live in the residence attached to his practice. Their interaction outside of medical work was polite but careful, as if both were uncertain about the appropriate boundaries between professional colleagues who had originally planned to marry. The community watched this delicate dance between their two physicians with the fascinated attention that small towns typically reserve for unresolved romantic situations. Mrs. Hayes, whose boarding house had become the unofficial center for gossip and speculation, fielded constant questions about when Dr. Bennett and Kate might finally address their personal relationship. Her diplomatic responses revealed nothing, while encouraging the assumption that resolution was simply a matter of time. Margaret Stone's perspective on the situation was characteristically practical. From her viewpoint, as someone who had observed both partners throughout the crisis and its aftermath, she believed that their professional collaboration had created a foundation for personal partnership that was far stronger than conventional romantic arrangements. Her occasional comments to customers suggested that she considered their eventual marriage inevitable, though she was careful not to pressure either party directly. Father O'Brien found himself in the unusual position of counseling two people about a relationship that existed in a state of professional intimacy but personal uncertainty. Both Kate and Dr. Bennett sought his guidance separately, each struggling with questions about duty, affection, and the proper way to transition from their original arrangement to something that reflected their current circumstances. His advice emphasized patience, honest communication, and recognition that their unique situation required solutions that went beyond conventional approaches to courtship and marriage. The arrival of Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell in late October introduced new complications that neither Kate nor Dr. Bennett had anticipated. Dr. Hartwell, one of the first women to graduate from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, had traveled to Millbrook Falls specifically to meet Kate and learn about her pathway to official medical recognition. Her presence represented both validation of Kate's achievements and a reminder of alternative paths that women in medicine might pursue. Dr. Hartwell's background included formal medical education, internship experience in major hospitals, and connections to the growing network of women physicians throughout the United States. Her conventional credentials contrasted sharply with Kate's military experience and frontier pragmatism, yet her respect for Kate's accomplishments was immediately evident. Their conversations revealed both the similarities and differences between women who had chosen medicine despite social obstacles. The visiting physician's presence also highlighted questions about Kate's future that extended beyond her relationship with Dr. Bennett. Dr. Hartwell brought news of opportunities in larger cities where women physicians were gaining acceptance, medical schools that were beginning to admit female students, and professional organizations that supported women's advancement in healthcare. Her descriptions of these possibilities forced Kate to consider whether her future lay in Millbrook Falls or in the broader medical community where her credentials might open doors that had previously been closed. Dr. Bennett's reaction to these alternatives revealed depths of feeling that he had not previously acknowledged even to himself. The possibility that Kate might leave Millbrook Falls to pursue opportunities elsewhere forced him to confront the reality that his attachment to her went far beyond professional appreciation or obligation to their original correspondence. Her potential departure would represent not only the loss of an excellent medical partner, but also the end of something personal that he was only beginning to understand. The crisis that would ultimately resolve their personal uncertainty arrived in the form of a telegram from Colorado Springs announcing a new outbreak of scarlet fever that threatened to spread throughout the territory. The message specifically requested Kate's assistance based on her reputation for epidemic management, offering her the opportunity to lead a territorial medical response team that would establish her as one of the region's foremost experts in infectious disease control. Kate's immediate response was to accept the assignment, seeing it as both professional duty and an opportunity to expand her medical practice beyond the confines of a single community. Her preparations for departure began immediately, with arrangements for temporary coverage of her patients and coordination with Dr. Bennett about managing the practice during her absence. Dr. Bennett's response to her departure preparations was more complex than he had expected. While he supported her professional advancement and recognized the importance of her contribution to territorial public health, he found himself struggling with emotions that went far beyond collegial concern. The prospect of managing the medical practice alone, after months of close collaboration, felt like a profound loss that affected him both professionally and personally. Their final consultation together before Kate's scheduled departure became the setting for a conversation that neither had planned, but both had been avoiding. Working late in the medical office to complete patient handovers and treatment protocols, they found themselves discussing not only medical matters, but also the future of their partnership and the nature of their relationship beyond professional collaboration. Kate spoke first about the confusion she felt regarding their original arrangement and how it related to their current circumstances. She acknowledged that her decision to respond to his advertisement had been based on desperation rather than romantic attachment, but she also admitted that their months of working together had created feelings that went far beyond professional respect. Her honesty about both the deception that had brought her to Millbrook Falls and the genuine affection that had developed during their partnership created an opening for equally honest conversation from Dr. Bennett. Dr. Bennett's response revealed his own evolution from the man who had placed an advertisement seeking a supportive wife to someone who had discovered the value of true partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose. He acknowledged that the woman he had found bore little resemblance to the companion he had originally sought, but he also admitted that Kate had proven to be everything he had not known he wanted in a life partner. Their conversation continued through the night as they explored questions about love, partnership, and the possibility of building a relationship that honored both their professional collaboration and their personal feelings. Kate's impending departure for Colorado Springs provided urgency to discussions that might otherwise have continued indefinitely, forcing them to address directly what they meant to each other and what they wanted their future to hold. The resolution came not through dramatic declarations, but through the gradual recognition that they had already built the foundation for the relationship they were seeking. Their months of working together under extreme pressure had revealed character, values, and compatibility that conventional courtship might never have discovered. Their professional partnership had created trust, respect, and affection that provided a stronger foundation for marriage than romantic attraction alone could have offered. Dr. Bennett's proposal was characteristically practical, acknowledging both their professional partnership and personal feelings, while recognizing that their relationship would always be different from conventional marriages. He asked Kate not only to marry him, but also to continue their medical collaboration as equal partners, offering her a future that honored both her professional achievements and their personal connection. Kate's acceptance was equally thoughtful, acknowledging the risks and benefits of committing to a relationship that would always blend personal and professional dimensions. She agreed to marry Dr. Bennett not out of gratitude or convenience, but because she had discovered in him a partner who valued her abilities, supported her ambitions, and offered her the possibility of a life that integrated all aspects of her identity. Their engagement announcement created considerable excitement in Millbrook Falls, where residents had been speculating about their relationship for months. The news was celebrated not only as a romantic resolution, but also as confirmation that their medical partnership would continue to serve the community's needs. Father O'Brien expressed particular satisfaction at the outcome, having counseled both parties through their period of uncertainty. Dr. Hartwell's response to their engagement provided external validation for their decision. From her perspective, as someone familiar with the challenges facing women in medicine, she recognized that Kate's partnership with Dr. Bennett offered opportunities for professional fulfillment that would be difficult to find elsewhere. Her endorsement of their arrangement helped Kate feel confident that she was not sacrificing her medical career for personal happiness, but rather choosing a path that would allow her to pursue both. The scarlet fever assignment in Colorado Springs became an opportunity for Kate to demonstrate her capabilities as an independent medical professional while maintaining her connection to Millbrook Falls and Dr. Bennett. Her successful management of the epidemic response earned recognition throughout the territory and established her reputation as one of the region's foremost experts in infectious disease control. Dr. Bennett's management of the Millbrook Falls practice during Kate's absence proved to both of them that their partnership was based on choice rather than necessity. While he missed her collaboration and looked forward to her return, he was able to maintain quality medical care for their patients and handle the administrative responsibilities that their expanded practice required. Kate's return from Colorado Springs was marked by a reunion that confirmed the depth of their personal connection alongside their professional compatibility. Their time apart had strengthened rather than weakened their relationship, providing both with confidence that their feelings were based on genuine affection rather than proximity or convenience. Their wedding planning became an extension of their professional collaboration, with decisions made jointly and arrangements reflecting their shared values rather than conventional expectations. Father O'Brien agreed to perform the ceremony. Margaret Stone coordinated community contributions to the celebration, and Mrs. Hayes organized accommodations for guests traveling from throughout the territory to attend. Dr. Morrison's return to Millbrook Falls for the wedding provided an opportunity to celebrate not only their personal happiness, but also their professional achievements. His presence reminded everyone of the transformation that had occurred in their community's medical care and the broader implications of their pioneering partnership for frontier healthcare. The community's investment in their wedding reflected the recognition that Kate and Dr. Bennett had become more than individual residents. They represented the possibility of innovation and progress that could benefit everyone. Their marriage symbolized the community's commitment to supporting unconventional approaches that achieved superior results, whether in medicine, relationships, or community development. As autumn turned toward winter, the preparations for their December wedding created anticipation throughout Millbrook Falls. The ceremony would represent not only the union of two people who had found love through shared purpose, but also the formal recognition of a partnership that had already transformed their community and established new possibilities for others facing similar challenges. Their story had evolved from a practical arrangement between strangers into a love match based on mutual respect, shared values, and professional collaboration. The mail-order bride who had arrived during a cholera outbreak had become a territorial medical specialist, while the lonely doctor, seeking a supportive wife, had discovered the value of true partnership. Their upcoming marriage would formalize a relationship that had already proven its strength through crisis, scrutiny, and success. The first snow of winter arrived on December 15th, just 3 days before Kate and Dr. Bennett's wedding, blanketing Millbrook Falls in pristine white that transformed the mountain town into something resembling a fairy tale illustration. The timing seemed almost providential to residents who had watched their relationship develop from practical arrangement to genuine partnership, and many interpreted the early snowfall as nature's blessing on their upcoming union. St. Mary's Church had been decorated with pine boughs and winter flowers gathered from the surrounding mountains, creating an atmosphere that was both festive and reverent. Father O'Brien had spent weeks preparing for what he considered one of the most significant ceremonies of his ministry, not only because of his personal affection for the couple, but also because their marriage represented something larger than individual happiness. Their union would formalize a partnership that had already changed their community and established precedents that would influence frontier life throughout the territory. The guest list reflected the breadth of Kate's impact during her time in Millbrook Falls. Dr. Morrison had traveled from Denver despite the winter weather, bringing with him several colleagues from the territorial medical community who wanted to witness the wedding of the woman who had revolutionized frontier healthcare. Dr. Hartwell had postponed her return east specifically to attend the ceremony, viewing it as a celebration of women's advancement in medicine as much as a personal milestone for Kate. Territorial officials had also made the journey to Millbrook Falls, recognizing that Kate and Dr. Bennett's partnership had become a model for innovative medical practice that deserved formal acknowledgement. Their presence lent official weight to the celebration, while demonstrating the government's support for unconventional approaches that achieved superior results in frontier communities. The morning of the wedding brought clear skies and brilliant sunshine that turned the snow-covered landscape into a sparkling wonderland. Kate prepared for her wedding day in the small house that had become her home during the months of professional establishment and personal uncertainty. Mrs. Hayes assisted with her preparations, having appointed herself as unofficial coordinator of feminine arrangements for the ceremony. Kate's wedding dress reflected the practical elegance that had characterized her approach to life in Millbrook Falls. The gown was beautiful, but suitable for frontier conditions, created by local seamstresses, using fabric that Margaret Stone had special ordered from Denver. The design incorporated subtle medical symbols that acknowledged Kate's professional identity, while maintaining the traditional appearance appropriate for a frontier wedding. Dr. Bennett spent his wedding morning in consultation with Dr. Morrison and visiting colleagues about the future of frontier medical practice. Their discussions revealed the extent to which his partnership with Kate had influenced thinking about healthcare delivery in underserved communities. Several territories were considering legislation that would create pathways for recognizing medical expertise gained through experience rather than conventional education alone. The ceremony itself drew virtually the entire population of Millbrook Falls, along with visitors from throughout the region. Sheriff Carter coordinated security arrangements that were more appropriate for a territorial celebration than a simple frontier wedding, while maintaining the intimate atmosphere that reflected the couple's connection to their community. Father O'Brien's homily focused on the themes of partnership, service, and the ways that individual commitment could create benefits for entire communities. He spoke about the transformation he had witnessed in Millbrook Falls during the cholera epidemic, emphasizing how Kate and Dr. Bennett's collaboration had demonstrated the power of combining different strengths toward common purposes. His words resonated not only with wedding guests, but with anyone who had observed their partnership develop over the preceding months. The exchange of vows reflected the unique nature of their relationship and their commitment to maintaining both personal and professional partnership. Kate and Dr. Bennett had written their own promises to each other, acknowledging the unconventional beginning of their relationship while committing to a future built on mutual respect, shared values, and continued collaboration in serving their community's medical needs. Kate's vows included specific acknowledgement of the deception that had brought her to Millbrook Falls, her gratitude for the opportunity to practice medicine openly, and her commitment to honoring both her personal relationship with Dr. Bennett and their professional obligation to their patients. Her words were direct and honest, reflecting the straightforward approach that had characterized her adaptation to frontier life. Dr. Bennett's vows emphasized his appreciation for discovering a partner whose capabilities exceeded his expectations and whose presence had enriched both his professional practice and personal life. He committed not only to supporting Kate's continued medical career, but also to maintaining the collaborative approach that had made their partnership successful during the crisis that had brought them together. The wedding reception took place in the church hall, which had been transformed into a celebration space that could accommodate guests from across the territory. Margaret Stone had coordinated food contributions from throughout the community, creating a feast that demonstrated Millbrook Falls' prosperity and hospitality. The menu reflected both frontier practicality and special occasion elegance, with dishes that showcased local ingredients prepared according to recipes that guests had contributed from their various backgrounds. Speeches during the reception provided an opportunity for community leaders to acknowledge the broader significance of Kate and Dr. Bennett's partnership. Sheriff Carter spoke about the stability their medical collaboration had brought to the community, while Mrs. Hayes described the personal courage that Kate had demonstrated in adapting to frontier life and professional challenges. Dr. Morrison's speech focused on the medical innovations that had emerged from their partnership and the influence their collaborative approach was having on healthcare policy throughout the territory. He announced that the Territorial Medical Board was developing new certification programs based on the precedent established by Kate's credentials, creating pathways for other experienced practitioners to gain official recognition regardless of their educational background. Dr. Hartwell's remarks addressed the significance of Kate's achievements for women in medicine generally. She described how Kate's success in gaining territorial medical credentials had influenced discussions about women's medical education and practice rights in other regions, creating opportunities that might not have existed without her pioneering efforts. The community's gifts to the couple reflected both practical frontier sensibilities and recognition of their special status. Margaret Stone presented them with a complete set of medical instruments that would enable them to expand their practice capabilities, while Father O'Brien contributed a collection of medical texts that included the latest developments in epidemic medicine and frontier healthcare. Mrs. Hayes' gift was more personal but equally thoughtful, a detailed record of Kate's first months in Millbrook Falls that documented her adaptation to frontier life and the development of her relationship with Dr. Bennett. The journal included observations from community members about her medical work, her integration into local society, and the gradual recognition of her extraordinary capabilities. As evening approached, the reception evolved into a community celebration that extended far beyond the immediate wedding party. Musicians from throughout the region contributed to entertainment that reflected the diverse backgrounds of Millbrook. Falls residents, while dancing, continued late into the night despite the winter cold. Kate and Dr. Bennett's first dance as a married couple symbolized the partnership that had already proven itself through months of collaboration and crisis management. Their obvious comfort with each other and natural coordination reflected the professional partnership that had provided the foundation for their personal relationship. The honeymoon was necessarily brief, given their medical responsibilities, but Kate and Dr. Bennett spent several days at a mountain cabin that provided them with privacy to begin their married life while remaining accessible for medical emergencies. Their honeymoon conversations focused as much on plans for expanding their medical practice as on personal matters, reflecting the integration of professional and personal dimensions that would characterize their marriage. The spring of 1883 brought new challenges that tested their partnership in ways that neither the cholera epidemic nor the medical board investigation had anticipated. Word arrived that railroad expansion would bring increased population to Millbrook Falls, creating opportunities for economic growth, but also straining the medical infrastructure that Kate and Dr. Bennett had developed for a smaller community. Their response to this challenge demonstrated the maturity their partnership had achieved through their months of collaboration and their commitment to serving community needs regardless of personal convenience. They developed plans for expanding their medical facilities, training additional healthcare workers, and establishing protocols for managing increased patient loads without compromising care quality. Kate's pregnancy announcement in late spring added personal dimensions to their professional planning, while highlighting the ways their marriage had created stability that extended beyond their medical practice. The prospect of raising children in Millbrook Falls reflected their commitment to the community that had supported their unconventional relationship and provided opportunities for both personal and professional fulfillment. Dr. Bennett's response to impending fatherhood revealed the depth of change that his partnership with Kate had created in his understanding of family and professional responsibilities. His excitement about raising children with a woman who shared his professional interests and values reflected his appreciation for the partnership they had built together. The community's reaction to Kate's pregnancy demonstrated their investment in her continued presence in Millbrook Falls and their expectation that her medical practice would continue despite maternal responsibilities. Mrs. Hayes began organizing support systems that would enable Kate to maintain her professional work while caring for their future children, while Margaret Stone researched medical equipment and supplies that would facilitate family life alongside medical practice. Summer brought the arrival of Dr. James Crawford, a young physician fresh from medical school who had requested assignment to Millbrook Falls specifically to learn from Kate and Dr. Bennett's innovative partnership. His presence provided an opportunity to train someone in their collaborative approach while ensuring continuity of care as their practice expanded to meet growing community needs. Dr. Crawford's education at a progressive medical school had included exposure to ideas about collaborative practice and women's participation in medicine that prepared him to appreciate Kate's expertise without the prejudices that had characterized earlier interactions with established physicians. His enthusiasm for learning from both partners created a positive dynamic that enhanced their practice capabilities while providing professional development opportunities that neither had anticipated. The establishment of their medical training program attracted attention from medical schools and territorial health authorities who were interested in developing models for frontier medical education. Kate and Dr. Bennett found themselves consulted about curriculum development, training protocols, and certification standards that would influence medical education throughout the developing American West. Their first child, a daughter they named Sarah Catherine Bennett, was born in October during the first anniversary of their meeting with the Territorial Medical Board. The timing seemed symbolically appropriate to everyone who had followed their relationship from its uncertain beginning to their successful marriage and expanding family. Kate's ability to maintain her medical practice while caring for Sarah demonstrated the practical benefits of their professional partnership and the community support systems that had developed around their unusual circumstances. Dr. Bennett's involvement in childcare responsibilities reflected his commitment to equality in their personal relationship as well as their professional collaboration. The approach of winter brought news that other frontier communities were requesting assistance in establishing medical partnerships similar to the one that had proven so successful in Millbrook Falls. Kate and Dr. Bennett found themselves serving as consultants for territorial health initiatives while maintaining their local practice and adapting to parenthood. Their response to these broader responsibilities reflected the maturity their partnership had achieved through nearly 2 years of collaboration. They developed training materials, consultation protocols, and support systems that could help other communities benefit from their innovations, while ensuring that their own practice and family life remained priorities. As 1883 drew to a close, Kate and Dr. Bennett reflected on the transformation their partnership had created not only in their own lives, but in the broader understanding of medical practice, professional collaboration, and women's participation. In frontier life, what had begun as a practical arrangement between strangers had evolved into a marriage that integrated personal happiness with professional fulfillment and community service. Their story had become something larger than individual achievement, representing possibilities for innovation and progress that could inspire others facing similar challenges in frontier communities throughout the American West. The mail order. Bride, who had arrived during a cholera outbreak, had become a territorial medical specialist, while the lonely doctor, seeking a supportive wife, had discovered the transformative power of true partnership. The legacy of their collaboration extended far beyond their personal success to influence territorial medical policy, women's professional opportunities, and community approaches to crisis management. Their partnership had demonstrated that competence mattered more than convention, that innovation could emerge from necessity, and that individual courage could create benefits for entire communities. Looking toward the future, Kate and Dr. Bennett understood that their story was still being written through their continued medical practice, their growing family, and their influence on healthcare development throughout the frontier. They had proven that love could emerge from shared purpose, that professional partnership could provide the foundation for personal happiness, and that individual achievement could create opportunities for others facing similar challenges. The transformation of Millbrook Falls from a struggling frontier community to a model for innovative medical care reflected the broader changes that their partnership had helped to create. Their success had attracted new residents, stimulated economic development, and established their town as a destination for people seeking both quality healthcare and progressive social attitudes. As snow began to fall again on their second winter as a married couple, Kate and Dr. Bennett watched from their expanded medical facility while planning for a future that would include more children, continued professional growth, and ongoing service to the community that had become their true home. Their partnership had proven that the most unexpected beginnings could lead to the most fulfilling destinations, and that courage combined with compassion could transform not only individual lives, but entire communities. The story of the mail order. Bride, who had reached town during a cholera outbreak, had become a legend of love, triumphing over fear, competence, overcoming convention, and partnership, creating possibilities that neither individual could have achieved alone. Their legacy would continue through the lives they saved, the careers they inspired, and the community they had helped to build in the heart of the Colorado mountains. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.